Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier journalist and top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine, Fernando Uribe. Hope you had a wonderful week. Yes, we lost an hour of sleep due to daylight savings time, but you know what? Hopefully warmer days are ahead and the afternoons are just a little bit brighter. So hopefully you're all well. There is a lot to discuss. So let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. And ladies and gentlemen, without question, David Cruz from NJTV simply needs to do better. Now, let me tell you a story about a guy who appeared on Reporters Roundtable, which many of you are aware if you're a regular watcher of NJTV. It is perhaps the iconic series of weekly panels hosted by Michael Aaron, who was a longtime senior correspondent with NJTV. I would argue Michael Aaron probably is on the Mount Rushmore in terms of New Jersey journalism. But Michael Aaron in 2020, even shortly before the pandemic hit here throughout the country and in New Jersey specifically, decided to step down. And David Cruz, who was the senior correspondent at the time, obviously was promoted up to Michael Aaron's level of hosting programs and sort of being now the top dog at NJTV. But back in December of 2018 and in January of 2019, yours truly was asked to appear on Reporters Roundtable. Now again, it's a weekly 30-minute program, hosted obviously, whether it was by Michael Aaron or David Cruz or other guest hosts that they had over time. And it would feature, three prominent journalists on a weekly basis, and I was fortunate enough to appear on multiple episodes on Reporters Roundtable. Now, one of the things that was sort of a thrill for me was to be in the same studio as Michael Aaron, and so to contribute along with other very respected journalists. Now, maybe not in the same manner that I engage in journalism. There were more print journalists, columnists per se, while as you all know, I engage in opinion journalism. But nevertheless, I was so proud to be there. Made a point to wear the best suits that I possibly could and contribute in only the way that I could. Of course, at the time representing Insider NJ, because of my podcast, Politically Direct, which I still host today. But at the time, that's who I was representing, along with the other panelists. And I remember during both of those segments, if you remember, it was during a time in New Jersey when the Murphy administration was under some scrutiny and was under the microscope because of what was going on with the Katie Brennan situation. As you all know, Katie Brennan, a Jersey City resident and longtime Politico, right, in the state of New Jersey, was working on the Murphy campaign, and certainly allegations were made against another Murphy campaign operative, Al Alvarez, concerning sexual assault. Now, what we know, and obviously it's been a long chronology, I don't want to sort of relitigate this, but we all know that a lot of players were implicated here as to who knew what, who decided to pursue charges, who decided not to. Bottom line, it included a cast of characters, whether it was Esther Suarez, the Hudson County prosecutor, as well as other prominent state officials. Well, the bottom line was, I remember going on that panel, and it was during the time in Trenton when they were having the Katie Brennan hearings, right, to sort of get to the bottom as to what happened with her and Al Alvarez, as to why Al Alvarez, despite these allegations being out there, was still employed in the Murphy administration, but nobody really knew why and where he was working. But everyone knew that he was collecting a paycheck, again, via the state of New Jersey with the Phil Murphy administration. But I remember, and again, I'm old enough to remember that same fall, Governor Murphy decided to take to the airwaves whenever he could. And if you remember, he was denouncing then Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. You remember, right, all the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, which we all know now today were completely unfounded, right? If you remember, Professor Blasey Ford, can't remember what, she had for lunch yesterday. Did we really expect this woman to know what she remembered 30 years ago? Of course not. And of course, all the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh started deteriorating quicker than the Mets bullpen during October. But let me not digress. Bottom line was, I made the mention on the air, live in the studio, that, the governor seems to be all about, hey, let's believe women, and he was all about supporting the Me Too movement, right? And, hashtag believe women, hashtag believe all women, hashtag, all women are credible. I mean, we all saw it, folks. And I'm not trying to trivialize or make fun of the movement itself. Yes, sexual assault allegations are serious. And while Governor Murphy and many New Jersey Democrats were quick to sort of throw Brett Kavanaugh under the bus, right? When it came time to get to the bottom of what was going on with the Katie Brennan story, well, folks, it was like crickets, okay? It was like crickets. It was as quiet as, again, Citi Field in October. But you know what? Nobody ever brought that to the governor's attention. No one ever challenged him on it. But you know who did on the air? I did. And I said, wow, isn't it funny that the governor's all about, hey, Kavanaugh should step down, which I'm glad he didn't because he was a very good nominee and he's proven to be a good Supreme Court justice. But you know, when it comes to this, and even now recently, and I'll mention why it's relevant today, I remember the collective groan in the studio, not so much from Michael Aaron, but from others on the panel, specifically David Cruz, right? And I remember I made this comment in December and I made it again in January 2019, to say nothing of the fact that even during one of those panel sit-downs after we recorded live in the studio, I remember David Cruz pulling me aside and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not really a fan of your local podcast, Talking to Hudson, because it seems like you're talking down to Jersey City residents and kind of trashing Jersey City. And it looks like dog whistling to me. Well, you know what? This is the truth, folks. You know, what I've said about Jersey City in terms of a landscape and areas of Jersey City are correct. Folks, you ever gone down to the south side of Jersey City? It's a dump. It really is. You couldn't give a house away to me even if you wanted to. Okay, you could tell me, hey, Fernando, this mortgage is paid off. You'll never have to pay taxes on this house. Just go live there. I wouldn't, okay? You ever walk down Bergen Avenue? You ever walk down Martin Luther King Drive? You ever walk down Ocean Avenue? Folks, it's a dump. It's not a war zone per se, but it's not a place I want to walk around in the daytime, much less the nighttime. Now, for people that don't know, David Cruz lives on the south side of Jersey City. But you know what, Dave, listen. I'm not going to sort of ridicule you for where you live, but if you willingly decide to live in a really crappy area, then you kind of have to own the ridicule that comes with it. You can't get all triggered. You can't get all defensive. You can't get your panties in a bunch because someone dares to say, well, you know what? I would prefer to live in other parts of Jersey City, not the south side. But yet you decided to call that dog whistling, and you brought it to my attention. Well, some time later, obviously, since my appearances on NJTV, you know what? I've never been welcomed back. Now, obviously, as we know, Michael Aaron has stepped down, and I had a great rapport with Michael Aaron. He appeared on my podcast multiple times, and I had the chance to appear on Reporters Roundtable multiple times. But now that David Cruz is in charge, well, guess what? He has no interest in bringing me on there, despite me reaching out on Twitter, despite me calling him out on other media programs. You know what? And that's something that, you know what, he needs to do better, because if you ever watch Reporters Roundtable for some time, folks, it's a snooze fest. Now, I don't want to put all the weight on his shoulders, but they have some really boring guests. And I get it. It's not supposed to be a shouting match. It's not supposed to be WWE and pandemonium on the studio set. No one's talking about that. But if you watch Reporters Roundtable for some time now, it'll put you to sleep. Okay? It almost seems like I want to put razor blades in my mouth and just chew on them. That's how painful it is to watch it. But you know what? It seems like NJTV doesn't care, and neither does David Cruz. And more so now, one of the things that really bothers me about David Cruz is, yes, he laid out a collective groan when I called out the governor and challenged him on his blatant hypocrisy. Well, guess what? Recently, when Governor Andrew Cuomo across the river has like 7 women now accusing him of sexual harassment, and Andrew Cuomo has blood on his hands, folks. He's murdered people in New York, okay? He's murdered thousands of people in New York. It's coming out. We're going to see these investigations, and hopefully Andrew Cuomo gets his just deserves. And yes, while he's entitled to due process, the guy should be rotten in jail for what he's been doing. But more so about the sexual harassment allegations. And you know what? When Governor Murphy was asked about that at a recent COVID presser, he said, quote, yes, I find it deeply troubling. And that's it. He's never talked about it again. But God forbid if it was a Republican governor doing what Andrew Cuomo did, Phil Murphy and prominent Democrats all across New Jersey could not shut up about it. I promise you, that's what would have happened. Happened in fall of 2018. And you know who's still not challenging the governor on this? David Cruz. Now, this is the head honcho on NJTV, right? He's the CNN correspondent. He's the host of Reporters Roundtable. He's the host of his own show, The Chat Box, on NJTV. And never once do you see David Cruz challenging the governor. I don't know about you. That's not journalism. That's just either being complacent or you're coddling Democrats, liberals, and progressives in New Jersey. That's what liberal journalists tend to do. They never tend to call out bad behavior by Democrats. They'll scream to the heavens about Republicans and conservatives, but when Democrats do what Andrew Cuomo did and other Democrats have done, it's crickets. It's like being somewhere in Morris County in the middle of the day, and all you see is bears and deer and nothing else, and it's quiet. Folks, David Cruz needs to do better. So does NJTV. And by the way, Dave, if you want to actually maybe get your ratings up on Reporters Roundtable, bring on some interesting personalities. I don't know, maybe like a journalist from Hudson County that hosts award-winning podcasts and other shows. I don't know. I'm just trying to help you out here, man, because God knows you need the help now more than ever. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. in the latest edition of the four-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson, was Jersey City Ward F council candidate Frank Educational Gilmore. Now, we spoke for over an hour on a multitude of different topics, and here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we talked about his desire to run in Ward F, and specifically why he doesn't feel that the incumbent, Jermaine Robinson, deserves another term. Let's hear what he had to say about it.
Well, let's get a little more specific here. I'm a policy guy. By daytime, my trade is as an educator. I'm all about dissecting how government works and how it should work, how it's not working. You've had some reservations, Mr. Gilmore, about the incumbent in this race. Obviously, each ward is going to have perhaps some competition. But a lot of people that I talk to in Hudson County, operatives and other insiders, keep telling me that perhaps the most interesting race of all the ward races is going to be Ward F, where you and the incumbent, I think, it's almost like main event boxing here. It's almost like those good old days, and God rest his soul, with Marvin Hagler recently passing over the weekend, a great boxing icon. But, I grew up loving boxing, and you grow up loving those fights. People keep telling me, man, this Ward F race has got like a Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns, just all-out drag-out. It's going to be tough. It's going to be nail-biting. It's going to be gritty, Mr. Gilmore. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I think that's an accurate assessment. Seeing that we have one candidate who have the financial capacity to withstand a lot of things, we have another candidate and myself who have been a community advocate, who have always been on the right side of advocacy. While I don't have the financial, power to say, I do have the people's interest at heart. And a lot of people really feel that the representation that can move this ward forward is in myself, Mr. Gilmore. And I have all of the faith in the world and the residents and the constituents in Ward F that we will come to a historical conclusion in this upcoming election. And I will say this, right? At the end of the day, no matter what happens, the advocacy from our community will continue. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not, interested in entertaining any deals which will, get me out of the race. And I will continue to advocate for what's right, because I'm of the opinion that I have a second chance at life, right? And I've dedicated this second chance at life to a life of community service. So in this second chance at life for me, it's about putting the people first, doing the work for the people. And that's what this campaign is geared towards. That's what this campaign is about. And again, win, lose, or draw, I'm going to continue this advocacy. This is not no political maneuver. It's not a political stunt. This is sincere, hard work and dedication on the behalf of the people here in Ward F.
He certainly laid out his case for his candidacy, and more specifically, where Jermaine Robinson is lacking right now in 2021. Secondly, we talked about his thoughts on Mayor Stephen Fulop, and ultimately, because Jermaine Robinson is running on the mayor's ticket, certainly he might be displeased also with the mayor. Of course, he had a lot to say about that as well.
Now, Mr. Gilmore, I think a question you're probably being asked, maybe by people you're talking to in the community, and, it sort of bears mentioning that, you're running in Ward F, obviously, because A, you're not happy with the current representation, but then B, it sort of lends itself to a bigger question where if you're not happy with the incumbent in Ward F, then it's easy to sort of conclude that you're not happy overall with the leadership in Jersey City. That's what some would conclude, Mr. Gilmore. Some would say, well, if you're not happy with the incumbent in Ward F, then you're clearly not happy with Mayor Stephen Fulop, because obviously he's going to be running on Mayor Fulop's ticket, and he's a broader representation of Mayor Fulop's, platform and policies in Jersey City. we know you have a bone to pick with the incumbent, but does that also translate into disagreeing with Mayor Fulop as well?
I mean, right now, I'm focusing on advocating for the residents of Ward F. And the reality is that I'm going to work with whatever mayor is there. The thing about me is like, this stuff is not personal to me, right? I don't know the mayor personally, right? But I know his agenda items. I know his advocacy. I know his ways on how he vote on legislation, right? And so that I take problems with, because there has been instance where Ward F has been left out in its fair share. If we look at the municipal budget and we see the programs that were cut, i.e. recreation to the tune of 42%, kids on the south side of Jersey City, namely Ward F, may be the biggest recipients of recreation. This is not to say that other wards are not utilizing recreation. I'm essentially saying that recreation is a huge outlet for residents in Ward F. And anytime I look at an administration and I see that they're cutting essential services for kids, it just means that it's a lack of representation for said jurisdictions where these cuts are going to affect the individuals the most. And if you know anything about recreation and you know anything about the South Side in Jersey City, there's a clear correlation, and this is what the data show, this is what the research show, that there's a clear correlation in individuals, i.e. youth, having things to do in crime, right? I'm a mentor. I run a mentoring agency. I deal with high-risk mentors, right? And those are the individuals who likely have juvenile adjudications pending against them or charges. So when I'm doing this work and I'm asking these individuals why are they incarcerated, why were they out there doing what they're doing, a lot of times they're telling me they're doing what they're doing because there's nothing else to do. So when we see administration taking away resource from a resource-deprived community, that's very problematic for me, and I'm going to advocate with every fabric of energy in me to ensure that the residents of Ward F are getting their fair share of this city budget.
It was a very interesting episode, to say the very least, and certainly you can listen to it in its entirety, once again, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talkin' Hudson. You can download the episode and listen to it from anywhere at any time from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Once again, these are the exclusives that I'll continue to bring you in 2021, and certainly the exclusives that nobody else is bringing you in Hudson County media. Now some local stories for your consideration, and a shout out to John Hines with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. Former Jersey City Board of Education President Sue Dan Thomas pled not guilty this week after being indicted by the Office of the Attorney General of New Jersey, Uribe, for allegedly soliciting $35,000 in cash bribes from a cooperating witness. Now, Sue Dan Thomas was arraigned before Morris County Superior Court and Judge Stephen Taylor on Monday this week and entered a plea of not guilty. Now, Sue Dan Thomas faces a 4-count indictment accusing him of official misconduct, a pattern of official misconduct, bribery in official and political matters, and acceptance or receipt of unlawful benefit by a public servant for official behavior. Also at the hearing, the state placed an offer that their initial post-indictment plea offer is also on the table. In exchange for Thomas's guilty plea to second-degree official misconduct, the state would recommend 5 years in state prison without the possibility of parole. Furthermore, he would forfeit approximately $10,000 worth of illicit proceeds, face a lifetime ban on public employment, and subsequently forfeit his pension. Now, Sue Dan Thomas is represented by Matthew Troiano, a former Morris County Chief Assistant Prosecutor, and his initial case disposition conference currently is scheduled for May 3rd in front of Judge Taylor. Now, he was previously charged by a complaint summons in December of 2019 when Attorney General Uribe first alleged that Sue Dan Thomas was preparing to run for Jersey City Councilman in 2021 at the time of his conduct. Now, he was charged with accepting $35,000 in cash bribes from a cooperating witness, $10,000 delivered on one date, and $25,000 delivered on a second date, who has since been identified as Matt O'Donnell. Now, back in January of 2018, multiple news sources in Hudson County reported that Thomas had opened a new account with the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission, though said that the notion he was prepping for a council run was, according to him, quote, fake news. Now, Thomas allegedly agreed in return for the cash payments to arrange for the cooperating witness to be hired as a special counsel for the Jersey City Board of Education, back when he was still president of the board. Now, 4 others were indicted also last month, which include former state assemblyman Jason O'Donnell, no relation to Matt O'Donnell, though he's only facing 1 count for alleged bribery in official and political matters. Now, the Attorney General's case is just the beginning of Thomas's legal problems, though. He's also staring down a 26-count indictment, yes, folks, 26 counts, from the U.S. Attorney's Office for allegedly engaging in embezzlement, money laundering, and fraud while serving as the acting director of the Jersey City Employment and Training Program. Now, folks, let me unpackage this a little bit for you. I've had the chance to meet Sudan Thomas in previous years when he was running for school board. He was gracious enough to come on my podcast multiple times to talk about issues that were relevant to parents and certainly children in the Jersey City School District. He was always a gentleman with me, and I certainly believe in due process. I believe everyone is again entitled to the presumption of innocence and to be judged by a jury of his or her peers. Again, I'm not trying to make this a law class, but it's a simple premise I live by. But folks, and again, I think you've come to rely on me for just sort of like the blunt truth here. It doesn't look good for Sudan Thomas. I mean, to say nothing of the fact of the state charges, but the federal charges look really incriminating. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is just another example of a tragic story. Here's a single dad who I know for a fact was working really, really hard, both in the private sector, and he gave a lot of his time on the Jersey City Board of Education to represent parents and to represent the best interests of children in Jersey City. To say nothing of the fact he also believed in the good, foundation that is the Jersey City Reentry Program. As we all know, former Governor Jim McGreevey was working there as well under the guidance of Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop. And even at the state level, he was also involved with there. And again, it seems like his heart was in the right place for a very long time. I don't know where he went wrong, but sometimes, folks, money can do some really strange things to you. And again, my heart goes out to his son, who's still very young. My heart goes out to his family. I'm sure they've been under the microscope since these charges were brought forth, not only by the state of New Jersey, but also now by the Department of Justice. And I don't know what to make of it, but it looks really, really bad for Sudan Thomas. Now, again, he's entitled to plead not guilty. My understanding is his attorney is one of the better ones when it comes to election law and obviously other infractions of the not just the federal criminal code, but the state criminal code. And we'll see what happens with Sudan Thomas, but it's not looking real good, folks. We'll certainly keep you posted about this story in the weeks and months ahead. But if at any point in time the state and the federal government have Sudan by the you-know-what, he might need to take a deal, and he might need to serve some prison time. Listen, you don't wish that on anybody, but maybe it's the lesson he needs to learn about violating the public trust and subsequently the consequences that can follow. Now let's move to Bayonne, where apparently the incumbent, Nicholas Cervellati, is not stepping down just yet. Now, shout out to Peter D'Auria from the Jersey Journal for his report on this story. Now, apparently the race for the assembly seat in the 31st Legislative District is not over yet. Now, Assemblyman Nicholas Cervellati has left open the possibility of running for re-election for the 31st Legislative District Assembly seat, despite the fact that Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis has pulled his support for his one-time campaign ally. Now, Cervellati told the Jersey Journal recently that, quote, he is still trying to determine what I do next. We're still working at it. We're still talking to people. We're still out there collecting petitions. We'll make a decision in the next couple of weeks. Now, until early this year, the race for Cervellati's assembly seat was shaping up to be a quiet one, for starters. Davis and the assemblyman were widely perceived as close allies. But last month, Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis unexpectedly revoked his support of the legislator's reelection campaign in a text message, a decision that has blindsided many in Hudson County and even all the way down in Trenton in the governor's office. Now, Cervellati told the Jersey Journal that he still doesn't know the reason for the mayor's decision, which he said, quote, took me completely off guard and by surprise. Now, again, sort of a chronology here. 2 weeks ago, Mayor Jimmy Davis announced that his chosen candidate, William B. Sampson IV, a crane operator at the Bayonne Container Terminal and a union member in the International Longshoremen's Association, Local 1588, will indeed be his candidate. Now, in an interview Wednesday, Sampson said he did not personally know Cervellati, but called him, quote, an excellent legislator. Well, folks, news is leaking out now, and apparently it was just reported by the New Jersey Globe that apparently Mr. Sampson is not a registered Democrat, and he has not even voted in recent elections, much less for Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis. So it kind of begs the question as to why the mayor decided to go in this direction. He's baffled everybody from HCDO chairwoman Amy DeGees to the more prominent political power players in Hudson County, which include Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop and North Bergen Mayor Nicholas Sacco, in addition as well as Union City Mayor Brian Stack. But his decision has just sent shockwaves throughout the county, folks, because Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis has yet to give an explanation thoroughly as to why he pulled his support for the incumbent Nicholas Cervellati. Now, again, whether or not the mayor will ever come out in public and admit it, who knows? But primary day, and more specifically, petitions have to be submitted sometime in April. So it only leaves Cervellati a few weeks left to figure out what he's going to do. Now, again, in all this disarray, everyone from Governor Phil Murphy to other prominent Democrats throughout the state of New Jersey have reached out to Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis to find out exactly what happened and to see if this can be repaired in any way. Folks, the bottom line is, it looks like this relationship is irreparable between Jimmy Davis and Nicholas Cervellati. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks as the assemblyman has some tough choices to make. Will he run off the line? And does he still have support among prominent Democrats? One thing is to have the governor on your side. One thing is to have the U.S. Senator, the senior U.S. Senator, Bob Menendez, on your side. But will that be enough to override the HCDO support, obviously, of the new assembly candidate in the 31st Legislative District? We'll see, folks. There's a lot to unpackage in Bayonne. It's going to get quite interesting in the next few weeks. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the leader in independent media, the Hudson Media Group, please check out their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and, of course, follow them on Instagram and Twitter. And remember, live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., you can listen to the 4-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/TalkingTheHudson. You can download the episodes and listen to them from anywhere at any time from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And I'll continue bringing you those exclusives that nobody else is bringing you in Hudson County, folks, via Blog Talk Radio every single week with Talk on the Hudson. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Talking Politics, right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm New Jersey's premier journalist and top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine, Fernando Uribe, saying so long and thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.